Hi, once again, welcome to my channel. My name is Rainer. This is my channel, Rainier Books. And, today, in this video, I want to talk about a book that I've listened to, 592 pages. I think it took me almost 16 hours of walking through the suburbs here of Stockholm to get through this book. This is Professor Ibram X. Kendi's a book, Stamped from the Beginning, The Definite History of Racist Ideas in America. And since this has to do with the Black Lives Matter movement, of course, and with efforts to try to educate myself about the situation of racism, not only in the United States, but even outside, I think I have to take up some other issues. I'm not going to review this book because I think I know way too little to be able to really give a critical view on the book. It really impressed me a lot. I'm going to talk about other things that I have done recently in the last couple of days, in the last couple of weeks, in connection to Ibram X. Kendi's work that helped me get new sights, new views on the problem, and even about the current situation in Portland, Oregon, where I have been twice in my life, a beautiful city that I really appreciate and really loved. So let's get started. I want to talk about Ibram X. Kendi's account about his great work, nonfiction work that won the National Book Award in 2017, I think, Stamped from the Beginning, The Definite History of Racist Ideas in America. Ibram X. Kendi is a professor at the University of Florida. He has done a very thorough history of racism in this book, and he has connected ideas, connected events, summarized them under the names and biographies of 5 Americans, from the Puritanist Cotton Mather to President Thomas Jefferson, to abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, to the scholar W.E.B. Du Bois, until Angela Davis. And his analysis is really brilliant. I don't remember all the names, all the events, especially in the 17th and 18th and even 19th century. I got more attached to the book in the 20th century and the 21st century. But it's a very important account that shows us that racism was there from the beginning, and that Afro-American people were stamped from the beginning. That already in the ideological history, in the thinking of philosophers of the 18th century, of the Enlightenment, even German philosopher Kant, even Swedish biologist Carl Linnaeus, I think, who is celebrated as a hero here in Sweden. A university is named after him. The University of Växjö and Kalmar is the Carl von Linné University. That even Linné, he didn't only categorize plants, but he also categorized humans into 4 categories. And he wasn't very friendly. He was very racist about the 4th category when it came to African people, to people from Africa. What I like about this book, and which gave me new perspectives also, was Kendi's take on popular culture in the 20th century. When I was little, when I was a teenager, I grew up in the 1970s. We watched Tarzan movies, and I remember at least 3 or 4 different actors who have played Tarzan. I didn't know at the time that I watched deeply racist television and cinema, and Planet of the Apes and things like that, which were very popular in the 1970s and 1980s, were of course a racist attempt to define black people as the apes that would take over the Planet of the Apes, in the way when they would sort of get to power, the white people would be suffering. I didn't see it when I saw that, but I was probably too young. I was probably too blind, but now I'm... Talking of which, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I like that from Rob, I think his name is Robert, from Barter Horts. He always tells us in his Friday Reads what he is reading, but he also speaks about the podcasts he's listening to or the music that he does, the movie projects that he is working with. And I think I'd like to steal that from him a little bit in the future as well. I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm out walking, either podcasts or books, and sometimes also music. I listen a lot to the BBC NewsHour, which is a fabulous news podcast twice a day to find on Spotify, where I listen to podcasts twice a day with new editions. 60 minutes of really all around the world journalism that gives you insights in a lot of countries that you don't hear so much from. And of course, and then I found a couple of good American podcasts, like the San Francisco Chronicle has two podcasts that I subscribe to. One is called Fifth and Mission. The other one is called It's All Political by the San Francisco Chronicle. And it is done by the podcast It's All Political by the San Francisco Chronicle is hosted by Joe Garofoli. And I think last week he had a podcast where he talked to Congresswoman Karen Bass from California. And Karen Bass mentioned the documentary 13th on Netflix and on YouTube, that if people want to educate themselves about the Black Lives Matter movement and about the history of incarceration in the United States. And I hadn't seen that documentary. 13th is a documentary that was released in 2016 on Netflix, and it was done by director Ava DuVernay. And I loved 13th because 13th is a film that you absolutely must see about the 13th Amendment. And it's about the thesis of the film is basically that slavery was never abolished in the United States, because there's the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment of the American Constitution is Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. This abolished slavery, but it has one important sentence in it, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. And 13th is also about the incredible increase of incarcerated people in the United States of America. I think in the 1970s, when Nixon had his law and order campaign, there were like only 300, 400,000 people incarcerated in American prisons. And then the Reagan presidency, and primarily, which I did not know about, the Bill Clinton presidency, the Democrat president Bill Clinton, he really sort of put a turbo on incarceration in the United States with his 3 strikes rule for the bigger time of their sentence. So the number of incarcerated people until 2014, I think it was 500,000 people in the 1980s with Ronald Reagan, when Ronald Reagan started his presidency. And then in 2014, 2015, there are 2.3 million people incarcerated in the United States. The prison population in the United States, they are 4% of the population of the planet. But the 2.3 million people sitting in American prisons are 25% of the incarcerated population in the whole world. And 48% of them are Black, are Afro-American. And that's the thesis of 13th, the movie by Ava DuVernay. It is also returning in Ibram X. Kendi's book, Stand from the Beginning, that slavery actually never really was abolished, that new structures were established within society and deep into every part of society that enhanced the discrimination of Black and brown people in the United States. And it's really shocked me, because when you see the whole picture, or when the whole picture is getting clearer, it really shows you that beyond this mist, beyond this fog, that you have in front of your eyes. And when this fog, slowly gets away, you see how incredibly complex the whole system is and the whole system is working. Ibram X. Kendi's thesis is that racism is actually something that is pretty young in the history of humankind, if I understood him right. Kendi says that racism is a tool of establishing power for the few people who have power on top of, in this case, the American society, to control all the others in the society. Racism is a tool. It is a way of exploiting people to the bones, of suppressing people, of keeping the people below the elite, below the very, very little elite, which is not an intellectual elite, but an elite of billionaires in power, in order to stay there. And the only chance of getting rid of racism, says Kendi, is to get rid of this elite. It's not education, and that's what I always hoped for, that education, a general enhancement of education, is going to get racism away, because people would understand that being racist is wrong. But Kendi says the education will lead us nowhere as long as we have an elite up in the top of the society, which is controlling, which is exploiting everybody else in order to maximize revenues, to make more billions and millions. And the only possible thing to change things, says Kendi, is to change the people and the elite. We have to find people up there who are anti-racist. The government is trying to show a picture of unrest, of chaos, of anarchy, that it has to establish law and order. And so I connect the books that I've read, Ibram X. Kendi's Stand from the Beginning, Akala's Natives about race and class and the ruins of empire, 13th, to the books that to for example, Masha Gessen's Warning in Surviving Autocracy, a book that I have reviewed a few weeks ago. And Applebaum has written Twilight of Democracy, the seductive lure of authoritarianism. And everything, for me, everything comes together right now, because we are in a situation, not only in the United States, we had elections in Poland, we have no real liberty of media in Hungary, we have right-wing parties everywhere around in Europe, where democracy is no longer, that's what Anne Applebaum says. I saw some interviews with her. I haven't read the book yet. I hope to read it very soon. And where democracy is no longer natural, because that's what we grow up with. I grew up in Germany, in West Germany, believing that democracy, and I was taught that is now the sort of form of state that we are going to live with our own lives, and it will go on forever and ever, and we will optimize democracy. I think John F. Kennedy said once, I don't have the quote in English, I always heard it in German when I grew up, that democracy may not be perfect, but it's the best form of government that we have in the world. And now it's pretty much in danger. And when I see the pictures of Portland, and I watch a lot on Twitter as well, where independent journalists and even young people make videos of the situation, that I always think about Masha Gessen's book Surviving Autocracy, and her writing about the Reichstag fire. Then when Adolf Hitler in 1934 established his absolute power in Germany, he used the fire of the Reichstag in Berlin, or the parliament, to blame the opposition for and to blame minorities for instigating the fire. I recently heard an interview with Professor Stanley from Yale University on PBS NewsHour, where he's talking about his book, How Fascism Works. If you combine certain things that Jason Stanley says in his book How Fascism Works, and that what he says publicly online, what Masha Gessen writes in their account in Surviving Autocracy, and combine that with thesis that Ibram X. Kendi develops and Akala develops, you come to a conclusion that is sort of leading on a very, very strange and dangerous path. The fascist always needs to create a situation where we have us and them. Us, we are the ones who love our country. Them, they are the ones who want to destroy our country. They hate our flag. They hate our national anthem. They want to destroy everything that we have built up. Us versus them. We are in that situation not only in terms of white, black, brown, we are in terms of policy in that situation, and that really worries me as much as the mistreatment of people of black or brown or Asian American descent. It's horrible to see that people are calling the virus the Chinese virus, which leads to horrible violence and aggressions against Asian Americans that have lived in the United States. Doesn't matter, they have lived for generations there. Doesn't matter if you have lived there for 1, 2, 3 generations. It's not acceptable. And all this us versus them creation, this is really something that is worrying me a lot in this year of 2020. Of 2020. And I hope that we find a solution out of this. The solution will not be a new president in the United States. It is maybe a part of the solution, but it will be not be the real solution, because the major construct of power and how things are distributed will remain in place. The reason why we got the 45th president of the United States, the reasons they will be kept if we don't change things. And I think that the situation, you can always, I sometimes think, why should I say something about it? I'm not American, I don't live in the United States, I live in Europe far away, I should keep myself to my own business, to my own country, to my own countries. But I think that we are responsible for each other. We live in a globalized world, and whatever happens in the United States, it might happen very soon also to us. So we are together, we are in this together. And that is not meant to get the focus away from the Black Lives Matter movement, but I think with less than 100 days to the election in the United States, which hopefully will be taking place, we have a situation where we have to be careful about democracy. So let's get optimistic again a little bit. This was something about my education, my self-education, about Black Lives Matter, about the history of racism, which leads me into, thanks to Ibram X. Kendi, actually, to thoughts that widen the whole perspective. And I also learned from Ibram X. Kendi, it's not possible to say I am not racist. Either you are racist or you are anti-racist. I am not racist doesn't exist. So we have to speak up, and that's part of being anti-racist. We have to speak up whenever we see injustice, as privileged as we are. Thanks very much for watching this video. Comments in the section below. And I see you soon with another video about a readathon. The first readathon that I'm taking part in. Thanks very much. Have a great evening, and bye-bye.